I first met Mr. McCarthy in Sacramento after he was elected to an assembly seat from his hometown of Bakersfield, a district in the Central Valley of California, which is really only one of the last red sort of bastions of California. And in part because of term limits, he quickly rose to minority leader. So this is my second stint covering minority leader Kevin McCarthy. Of all my memories from California, I think the one that stands out is I remember you had me and a couple other reporters over to the house you were renting with some other members for Chinese takeout. I have no idea what we discussed all these years later, which I blame on my kids because they sap all of my memories, but that's how far we go back. Now that I've said something nice, it's time for annoyingly tough questions. Not so much. But let me just start out. We do want to discuss a little bit the playing field in 2020. Obviously, the presidential race is the big dog race, but the battle for the House matters, as we know by watching what's going on in the House of Representatives this fall. So let me ask you, will Republicans win back the House in 2020?
Yes, and because President Trump's going to get reelected, and we should walk all through that. But the first question, and I want you to walk away today, and I want to give you certain numbers, because I want you to understand. The first number I want you to remember from now until the election, 19. There's only 19 seats for Republicans to win the majority. Put that in perspective, Democrats had to win more 2 years ago. We have 55 seats to play in. 31 of those 55, a Democrat sits in that President Trump carried. 13 of those first 31 are ruby red. Salt Lake City, Oklahoma City. And then we're literally leading in races that Trump did not carry, and even in California. So we'll walk you through as we go through this tonight. But remember, 19, 55 to play in, 31 of those that Trump carried. And I'll promise you, Trump's going to carry every single one of those again.
So a very bold prediction. Not everybody in your position is willing to make those kind of predictions. Talk to me first about the advantages and why you feel beyond President Trump getting reelected, because, for instance, we saw President Obama reelected in 2012. Republicans still maintained control of the House that they had won 2 years earlier. So you've just touched on it. Now expand a little on the advantages you see that it is going to create the flip right back.
Okay, so to answer your question, I first have to answer. We all have to go through. You cannot predict you can win. And I love this. I keep this tweet of Charlie Cook, if you know who Charlie Cook is with the Cook Report. In 2010, I was a recruitment chair. And I was out recruiting. We were in the minority. And I predicted we were going to win the majority. And Charlie Cook tweeted back at me that I was wrong. I saved that because we beat 63 Democrats that year, and I was right. You cannot understand if you can win unless you first understand why did you lose. Okay? And it's not one reason why we lost. There are multiple reasons, and let's first understand those, and then we'll understand our advantages. The first reason why we lost is history. The party in power, whoever captures the White House, on the first off-year election loses on average 30 seats, which would put us in the minority. We lost 40. Barack Obama lost 63. Clinton lost a great deal, right? That's one reason. The second reason was too many retirements. The most retirements in the history of the Republican Party, 41 in Congress. And they were really solid seats that these people would have won re-election. Now I have retirements this time. Some of them really don't give me problems. Actually, it's an advantage that they're retiring. Thirdly, Democrats did a few things right. They recruited smartly. They recruited smart people. They got people out of the military. They got women out of the military, out of the CIA and others. They really, and they had the advantage. They had, the base was more excited on their side than on our side. They did something else. You know how Democrats sit back and they say if they win, they want to change the size of the Supreme Court? What they want to do is every time they lose, they want to change the rules so somehow they can win. So let me walk you through 3 things they did. They first went, and this is the only thing that really President Obama's been doing. He was just at one of Soros's house the other night to do a fundraiser just for redistricting. Redistricting is supposed to happen every 10 years. They've captured more than 20 seats already in this last 10 years by redistricting. So they went to Pennsylvania and they sued in state court. The Democrats control the state Supreme Court, redrew the lines, and drew it politically to pick up 3 new seats. So they took 3 seats off the top right there. In Maine, there's only 2 congressional seats. You know what they did? They changed the federal election law in Maine. Not for the state office, but only for the federal offices. When you walk in and we have one of the congressional seats, you don't vote for one person, you rank them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know who got the most votes? The Republican incumbent. But he's not in Congress today because he didn't hit 50% because there's 5 people running. So they take the person who came in last, and whoever voted for him second now gets a first vote. And so the Democrat who came in second is now the member of Congress without getting the majority. Then in California, they did something you really need to watch. They did 2 things. Same-day voter registration with no form of ID. So you just walk up to the polls, you say, I want to vote. You're not on the rolls. Oh, that's fine. Just give me a provisional vote. And the majority of us out there, like me, I vote by absentee, where I get the ballot, I fill it out, and then what do? I fold it up. On the back, I have to sign my name, and either I had to return it or somebody in my immediate family. They eliminated that. Anybody could go pick it up. So what do we find after the election? You know those little Ring doorbells? Somebody ringing a doorbell, a video. Hi, this is Jane. It's a special program from the Democratic Party. We're here to pick up your absentee ballot. And it's a cultural difference between us, right? Us conservatives, not only do we go to the polls, we close the curtain, right? We don't want anybody to see where we're voting. Anybody else, oh, here, vote for me if not. So what we found is we had 14 seats in California. We lost half of them. We should have only lost 3. 4 of those seats on Election Day, they had won. David Valadao was ahead by 6 percentage points the day after the election. 3 weeks later, he ended up losing by less than 900. Another thing, we lost health care by 66 points, all based upon one amendment that we took during the health care bill, because what they did, they misread it, and they said we were taking away pre-existing conditions. Had we lost that by 34, we would have been okay. Then the last thing was money. They had about $250 million more than we did. The person who had the biggest outcome within here was Michael Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg gave him $110 million. Soros gave a big bit. Stiers gave more than $100 million. But Bloomberg spent his money very wisely, okay? He dropped $54 million in the last 4 weeks in 24 seats and won 21 of them. And what he did, he just changed the outcome. And what he did, he defeated a lot of the women Republicans and the minority Republicans. Like we would be in for so many millions, the DCCC would be so many, and he'd drop $2 to $5 million right on top of it. And he'd play late and do a turnout. So if you take the intensity level, it was on the Democratic side. So if you count up all the votes in the 2018 election, Democrats turned out 8.5% higher than Republicans. But remember this, it doesn't matter if you add up all the votes, it's the votes within the district. So if you take the 74 swing seats that make up the majority, count all the Republican votes and all the Democrat votes, you know what the percentage difference is? 1%. You know what the difference is between me sitting in the minority and being in the majority? Less than 107,000 votes out of all those that cast. So is the question, can we win? Yes. We just got a new poll out, not our poll, CNN, I think is the poll. The intensity level is on the Republican side now, not on the Democratic side. So we have to have improvement. We got to improve in our recruitment and others, but yeah.
Let's talk about some of the challenges. You're okay with some of your retirements, but there have been a fair number of retirements, which historically...
And there will be more.
How many more do you expect?
Okay, you'll see retirements go as filing comes up. On an average, people usually stay about 10 years, right? So if you get somebody like Mac Thornberry or Mike Conaway, they've been there almost 20 years. They are in the second and third most Republican seats in the nation. You tell them they have to stay? You know, I had this amazing guy, Ted Poe, retire in 2018. I was sad. Ted Poe was great. He always had the end of his talk with, that's just the way it is. And he was a judge, and he did this amazing job, right? I never knew this guy named Dan Crenshaw. Dan's one of my best friends. You know what? Dan's a former Navy SEAL, Purple Heart recipient, got into the race. People were spending millions of dollars. He only had a couple $100,000. He barely got to the runoff, and then he won overwhelmingly. And today, He has more followers on social media than any other Republican in the House. And he hasn't even been there a full year yet. So, are retirements bad? No. Now, I have 3 members who sit in seats that Hillary carried. Will Hurd retired? That hurts, okay? But Katko and Fitzpatrick, 2018 was our ceiling. Why do I know that? North Carolina 9. North Carolina 9, we just won a special election, 2 in North Carolina. One we should have, the other one I didn't know that we really should have. When I first looked early on, they wouldn't seat the individual who won, Mark Harris. They said there was harvesting of ballots, what they did in California. They said somehow that's illegal in North Carolina. I think it should be illegal everywhere. And he won with about 900 votes, and they challenged about 500. So if you want to say he did something wrong, you say he won by 400. We just won by more than 4,000. They got the exact same candidate they had before. He had 95% name ID. He was a Marine, a small business owner. He had all the money advantage, more than $8 million. We only had parity for 6 weeks. We had to go find somebody. Bishop, they had to run in a primary short term. And you know what happened? In North Carolina, Democrats get advantage to early voting. You know what happened between early voting and the election day? A hurricane came. Everybody in Florida was scared, but it only touched down in North Carolina in the 2 seats that we were running special elections in. We had to make up 5,000 votes on election day. The president and I go down there on a Monday. We couldn't even go to the location we wanted, where we had to hold the rally because the weather, well, not from the hurricane, but the weather was still bad. We had to hold it in a place that was just barely in the district and 3/4 in another person's district. Just that small improvement means 13 seats we pick up. If I was the Democrats, I'd be worried. Because what we found was Democrats started voting with Republicans. You know why? Because before, people were afraid that Nancy Pelosi was going to be Speaker. How could someone of the values of San Francisco be our Speaker? Nancy Pelosi is now the moderate inside the Democratic Party. The leaders of the Democratic Party, and let me tell you this is why retirements don't scare me. If 4 new members of the Democratic Party, AOC, Tlaib, Omar, Presley, if they can redefine the Democratic Party to be the socialist Democratic Party, what could the new people that we have running? And that's really what we should get into. So if I want the Republican Party to look like America and look like what the Republican Party's beliefs are, I've got to have some openings, right? I've got to have some new people coming in. And our recruiting is going amazingly.
Okay. Let's talk about the improvements you also want to make, I know, with female voters. And just because I know you're a stat guy, looking at the exit polls from 2018, 59% of female voters voted for Democrats, 40% for Republicans. And among married women, where Republicans have traditionally done at least on
We usually win married women.
Correct. It was 54% Democrats, 44% Republicans. And I think this also gets into the challenge you have in the suburbs. Now, not every suburb. I was in Indianapolis during the campaign. You didn't have any problems in the Indianapolis suburbs, but there were clearly, as we saw from the results, problems with the suburban vote that traditionally aligns with conservative values on fiscal and national security issues, and clearly they went a different direction. How do you solve that problem?
Great question. There was an interesting tweet the other day by David Wasserman, who writes the congressional part for the Cook Report. And I didn't have anything to do with it. He did it on his own. He said, what a reversal of fortune. In 2018, we had 30 new freshmen come in. 29 of them were males, 1 female. Now we have of these 55 races we're playing in, our candidates, the majority of them are women. The record number of candidates we've had, women candidates running, is about 136. I'm not done recruiting, and we already broke that record. We're at 142. I came here late last night because I stayed over to meet with this amazing businesswoman who's willing to run. There's another thing these 4 new Socialist Democrat women have done, the squad. They have empowered and have people, women who have difference of opinion of them, decide that they need to have a voice in Congress. I was a recruitment chair in 2010. At this moment in time, when we had won 63 seats that year, we had roughly about 536 candidates filed. We're already in the 720 range right now. You've got to look at metrics. If you ever want to measure, will a minority beat a majority, the minority at least have to have 420 seats. In any modern history, because what happens is they normally only recruit for 380 and you miss windows of opportunity. If I take you all to the beaches of California, we all get on a surfboard. Some of you have never surfed. Some will still make it to the beach and ride the wave, right? In the last election, President Trump didn't get a campaign. The money was substantially against us. We had no ability to come back. We were on our own. History was against us. It's usually when you come back at it. If you were a college graduate or a woman, proponently, you were against us. We normally kept the majority by winning married women on the issue of security and safety. At the beginning, it became the security, and it was more military-based. Is America safe from terrorism and others? Then it became another issue about security in our schools, security from drugs and others. And we were able to maintain that for quite some time. This was the window that took someplace different. And this is where we need to have an open discussion about what should the party look like 20 years from now. And we should be a little nervous because the age in America that is the largest. There are more 28-year-olds in America today than any other age. And how many people in this room are 28? Okay? This election, in a presidential election, is really going to come down to four main issues. It's going to be the economy. We're going to win in the economy because we proved it. We didn't need a magic wand. We just needed somebody who understood business to get in there and fight. Okay? It's going to be health care. We're not going to lose health care by 66 points. Health care, the challenge when people lose it, like Obamacare, if you like your doctor, you could keep it, you're taking something away. That's how you lost something. They beat us on the idea that we were somehow opposed to pre-existing conditions, even though we protected pre-existing conditions, but they paraded out to the American public we were taking something away. Medicare for all guarantees takes away more than 170 million Americans' health care. All right? The last issue is where we've got to actually do something different than we've done today. The environment. For a 28-year-old, the environment is the number one and number two issue. We all think what AOC put out, a Green New Deal, is crazy, right? If you poll it, 48% positive, 46% negative, just based upon the name. When you break it down, it'll begin to lose. But what if we took our principles and we weren't afraid as a conservative, because nobody in this room wants dirty water or dirty air, but what if we show that we can solve it? You're going to see a number of bills come out in the House. In California, we continue to outlaw everything plastic because we're afraid about what's happening in the ocean. Everybody wants a clean ocean. But what if I told you 90% of all the plastic that goes to the ocean comes from 10 rivers in the world? You're going to find that we're going to take a bill, take our foreign aid, none of it is in America, and focus on cleaning up those 10 rivers by the aid that we give to those countries. Wouldn't you want the ocean to be clean? And who would do more to clean up the ocean? Technology is going to transform our ability to health care the same way it's going to transform our ability to protect the environment. If the concern is about CO2, we have technology now that we can extract CO2 from the air. Bill Gates, Chevron, and Oxy are actually building this on a large scale in Texas, extract CO2 from the air and actually use it to bring oil up from the ground. Why shouldn't we as government not pick winners or losers, but enhance the tax code for anyone who wants to extract CO2 from the air? Would we not accomplish something more than ever start lowering all of our standards? Nuclear is a clean energy. Technology today allows you to actually build small nuclear. So why wouldn't we enhance it from a government standpoint to allow that to grow? Most scientists will tell you if you're concerned about climate change, plant 1 trillion trees. A tree is like our body. It's like our liver, our kidney. It captures the carbon from the air. It holds it in. But 1 trillion is a tremendous number, is it not? You know what Ethiopia did last year? They planted 300 million trees in 12 hours. It's not so big anymore, right? What if we, as Republicans, Bruce Westerman, who has a master's from Yale in forestry, he and I are coming up with a bill on the idea of 1 trillion tree program. We're not going to get there overnight. But you know what's so great about it? We shouldn't always have to look to government. What if we go back on one of our breaks coming up and we challenge every American to plant 3 trees? Is that too much? It's a canopy for your community. It's cleaner in the air. And we actually all do something about it. See, the difference between our philosophy and the Democrats is kind of like when it came to health care. We're all concerned about these people who are uninsured, but they told us we all had to give up our insurance to insure theirs. We thought we could still keep our insurance and take care of them. Now, when it comes to the environment, we're concerned about what the future holds. They want us to lower our standards from our homes, for how we travel, where we have cows, whether we can eat meat. This is how far this presidential campaign is going. No, I think we could have a great economy, at the same time use the technology that we're creating to make our environment better for the next generation. Let's have that debate instead of everybody saying we're just deniers. That is why I believe we're going to win and win into the future.
Oh. I think you made a little news there with your ideas on the environment and the political implications, so thank you. Let's talk about impeachment. I think it's just something that is on a lot of people's minds. Yeah. In your conversations with the president, what has he asked of House Republicans? He's very public about how he feels, but obviously you talk a lot. What have these conversations been like in terms of what he wants to see from his allies on the Hill?
He doesn't direct us to do something, but how would you feel if you get elected president and for the 3 years you've been in, they keep making something up about you? So, when it first comes on, everybody tells him, oh, don't worry about it. He goes on, he passes tax reform, he changes regulatory, he rebuilds the military, he rebuilds the VA. We have the strongest economy we had in 51 years. And finally, the Mueller report, with all the millions spent on it, all the individuals going to 13 different countries, says Adam Schiff was a liar. There was not proof. It wasn't beyond circumstantial evidence, right? And then what did we find? In August, Adam Schiff texts something, right? He puts something on Twitter. Then he starts and he comes out, I'm very concerned. The administration is going to withhold this whistleblower from coming forward. Just the name of the whistleblower, you think, oh, whistleblowers are really important people. There's two things I always look when someone's a whistleblower. Do you have firsthand knowledge and what's your rationale of why? What's your motive, right? Well, then we come forward, we all know more than the whistleblower. The speaker won't wait 48 hours to find out what's in the phone call. The president releases the phone call. They claim before this phone call's out, there's quid pro quo, that I made you do something for me, so I did something for you. That's what quid pro quo means. Well, we read in the phone call, there was only admiration in that phone call. So what do we do next? Well, Adam Schiff has to get right back at it. So he gets up in front of, and you all have to understand, this is what the American public doesn't understand. The way people get on committees, we all have like a steering committee, and a group of them vote for people to get on committees. But when it comes to House Administration, Rules Committee, and the Intel Committee, only one person decides from each party. I decide who's on Intel. The Speaker decides who's on Intel from hers. No steering committee or anything else. Why? In the Intel, if you're on the Intel Committee and you can only serve so many years, first I'll interview you got to be willing to travel. You're going to travel to far out places. You're going to see things we're doing. You're going to learn secrets that members in Congress have been there 30 years, have no idea ever happened, and no ability to read it. That's why you're going to be in the SCIF. That's why you're going to do certain things, because you're privileged of having some knowledge others not. When I was majority leader, I'm now minority leader, but I'm now the part of the Gang of Eight. So I learned things I never knew when I was in Congress about what our country's capability and what we need to invest in. So when members of this committee speak to us, there's times we're going to fund. Okay, we trust what you're telling us. Adam Schiff first lied to us about that he had proof and put America through that nightmare. Then he sits at that committee and starts reading a fake dialogue of the president, what he wanted it to say, when he had already told the public what he thought was in it. He was so convincing, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, on national television, told George Stephanopoulos when he said what Schiff was saying was not true, she said, no, it was. This same man, we find out later, when he's asked on TV, on MSNBC, do you know who the whistleblower is? No, I really wish I did. Someone should take a body language expert and see, because he was lying. Because you know what we found out later? Not because he told us. His staff met with the whistleblower. The whistleblower, who doesn't have firsthand knowledge, then goes to the inspector general. You know what the whistleblower did not tell the inspector general? that he met with the congressional office. Do you know a whistleblower fills out forms, and there's a question there that you check, just like your medical form, something else? You know, am I sick today? No. He skipped that box for some reason. And you know the one person Adam Schiff is not calling up in this investigation? The whistleblower. We don't need the whistleblower, apparently, now that he was so afraid of why he needed to have an inquiry, because the administration was withholding this person who had somebody tell him somebody to somebody else. And somehow that was knowledge. But we all have more knowledge now. So if you were this person, the President of the United States, and this continued to happen to you, I don't know how the President puts up with it. He still's focused every day on our issues before America, issues before the world. Will he get upset at times to say, how can they do this to me when I haven't done anything? I literally gave you the phone call, which no other president had done.
So let's talk about that a little, and I think it's important because I think people want to understand what the politics of this are, and also what House Republicans plan to do to try and push back on this strategically. So let me just bring up a couple of stats here, just to understand this and sort of reset some of this.
Okay.
So when you look at an average of polls through today, when you look at the polling on whether the American public supports the idea of an inquiry, just an impeachment inquiry, it is now at 49% support, 43.5% don't support. When you look at the idea that was just overall, all impeachment polls. People seem to be supportive of the idea, 49 to 43.5. Inquiry only, 53% support, 42% don't support. And the idea of impeach and remove, and this gets a little tricky because procedurally, but the idea when they poll impeach and remove, all polls across the board, 48% to 44%. And I think what Democrats are going to do, and this leads me into my question about how you guys deal with this, is point specifically to the transcript where the president, and I asked you about this at a news conference a couple weeks ago, are going to say he asked the Ukrainians to investigate a political rival, and he mentioned Joe Biden by name. So one, how do you help the president make the case that there was nothing wrong with that, but also in the House, where eventually this inquiry will probably see the light of day, there will probably be open hearings, and Speaker Pelosi has started to indicate that. What are you guys going to do strategically, message-wise, procedurally, to defend the president against what both he and almost every House Republican I talk to believes is an unfair charge of impropriety?
Okay, you got like 4 questions in there, so I'm going to take each and every one of them. And I want you to all understand this because everyone's going to have to be able to talk about this so the American public understands. I am not doing this as the Republican leader. I'm doing this as an American who believes in this republic, who sees something that is unjust, and I wouldn't want anyone, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, to have to go through this again. You'll hear people talk about a star chamber. This is something that was in England, that they abolished in the 1600s. Our founders cared so much about it, in the 5th and 14th Amendment of the Bill of Rights, they wrote in due process. We believe in fairness, do we not? My office looks directly across from the Supreme Court where this lady sits up there with a blindfold on and a scale. Doesn't matter who you are in America, the rule of law matters, right? And due process. And every time we've ever taken up impeachment, you have to explain to people, what is impeachment? Impeachment is the removal of a duly elected representative. So you should not take that lightly because you're going against what the people have said. You're going to change the fabric of America. You're going to make the view of the world much different to who we are. So we've always taken this very serious. So when the Democrats controlled the House and they were looking to impeach President Nixon, they first thought this was so powerful that everybody in America lends their voice for 2 years to a representative in the House. That's your voice. Everybody should vote on, should we have an impeachment inquiry, and what are the rules set to go forward? The same thing happened when it came to Clinton and a Republican. Newt Gingrich controlled the House. First, everybody voted, and they set up the rules, 900 pages. And you know what Bill Clinton got? I wrote this letter to Nancy Pelosi, and I asked her 10 questions. I didn't make the questions up. I just took, what did we do for Nixon, and what did we do for Clinton? If you believe in due process, whoever you want to impeach gets legal counsel in the room. They can cross-examine. Both sides get subpoena power, so everyone can bring whatever witness they want. It's going to be done in the public, and the Judicial Committee is where we go forward. You can give us witnesses that you want as well. So whatever decision you come to at the end, you don't pre-decide what the jury should decide at. You're going to give everybody the information. And wherever the truth goes, let it end up. That's kind of how we went and dealt with in the Mueller report and others, right? They just put everything through. So the first thing they did, they took it away from Nadler because they think Nadler is inept. They put it in shifts because he's more willing to lie, and he's in the Intel committee, so he could deny people from coming in. So they pick and choose how many Republicans can come in and how much staff. They're the only ones who are deciding on witnesses. Republicans don't get to decide on witnesses. They said, oh, it's very fair because you could ask question 2. Imagine if only one person brings in a witness, right? They don't let the public see, but what do they first do? They leak the transcripts, okay? So this is all you have to understand. One of your questions was, oh my God, the president talked to the president of Ukraine. He didn't talk about something for 2020. He talked about something that just happened in America, something that is an open case with the Attorney General, that we just found out that, yeah, it's moving along pretty well based upon information from last night. Why wouldn't you? We do this every single day in America, that we work with other countries on cases and others. Would you work with the Attorney General? It wasn't anything about Biden in the future. It's what transpired during that race, and nobody should have to go through that again, and why do we have to spend all that money? That's what he asked, and there was nothing illegal about it. If they accused him of a quid pro quo, look in the phone call. Is there any quid pro quo? The phone call took place July 25th. Remember that date. In all these testimonies I'm finding out, Ukraine had no idea any money was being held up to them to August 29th. And how'd they find out? From a Politico story. The money was released on September 11th. What did Ukraine do to get the money released? Nothing. Nothing. I don't care if you bring somebody in that has fourth-hand knowledge, that someone told me a rumor that somebody was going to ask to do something. Go look. Was anything done? No. So how do you have a quid pro quo if you did nothing to make me do something? All you have is another lie from Adam Schiff. And you look at this polling. I've done polling. I took polling in 95 congressional districts because that's where the whole play is going to be. And then I asked a second question to anyone who supports impeachment. 73% of the people who support impeachment already supported impeachment. You know what 2/3 of the people in these 95 districts said? Nothing in that phone call is impeachable. But half of the people in the overall thinks Joe Biden should be investigated and Hunter Biden. That's interesting to me. So you know what? What are we going to do as members in Congress? We hold our hand up to uphold the Constitution. So we're going to fight for it. We're going to fight for due process. We're going to fight for a system. If someone is duly elected and they haven't done anything wrong, we're not going to let somebody who just disagrees with the politics try to change our democracy and our republic as it stands today. And if that means we're going to go into a room, because you know what's going to happen here? Every member of Congress is going to be asked to vote. But we don't know what's happened in there. Oh, they said they let some Republicans in. Well, is some members more important than other members? Because my constituents are just important as some other constituents, and they should have a voice. And they're so offended that we went in to try to find a transcript. Because you know what he does now? They won't even release the transcripts. They're just going to let Adam Schiff write some report against any rules that we've never done before to tell us what we should think. The same man who lied to us last time, the same man who's been lying to us now, the same man who just got caught. And for any of you who are attorneys in the room, if you met with the whistleblower, your staff met with the whistleblower, who knows what was said? Well, only you, your staff, and the whistleblower. That makes you a fact witness. Nowhere in our judicial system allows a fact witness to be the prosecutor. Because if we were allowed to invite witnesses, you know who I'd invite? Adam Schiff's staff and Adam Schiff. What did you say to the whistleblower? How many times did you meet the whistleblower? What advice did you give to the whistleblower? Why did you lie to America?
Okay. Thanks for answering my four-part question.
I don't want to give you a short answer. I want you to understand this. Remember that. July 25th, the phone call. They have no idea money's being withheld. And you want to know the truth about all this? President Trump has given more money to Ukraine. And anytime taxpayer money is going to be sent to a country, especially when there are challenges, you want to see accountability. And this president has been, what did he tell us before this phone call? They were trying to accuse him of withholding the money, and he said, no, before I send money, I'm really concerned. Why isn't Europe doing more for you, right? And this is what he said. On all my meetings, he always said, why aren't they paying the 2% in NATO? Why aren't they doing more here? And then we get the phone call. What did he talk to the president of Ukraine? All they talked about, yeah, why isn't Germany and France doing more? Lo and behold, when you get the transcripts, it's the exact same thing that the president said before you had the transcripts. And you know what? He's provided more lethal weapons for Ukraine to defend themselves than Obama ever would. He wouldn't give it to them. And President Trump has given them more money. And this is what they're attacking him on? It's crazy.
Let's go to some questions from the audience. There's been, and I know you discussed California, but I'm going to ask this question from this person because there's a lot of interest in what happened in California and what you guys can do to turn things around. The specific question here, California has changed the rules for elections that virtually prohibits any conservative from ever being reelected. What is being done to make things, I guess, more competitive? What can you do, understanding the political atmospherics in California, the changes in the law, whether people like them or not? Obviously, some of it is, probably not the kind of thing you would have done as a reformer, which you have been on this topic. So what is it that you are doing and can do to try and make the party there more competitive in these seats?
The first thing you have to do is you got to work harder. And I'm not afraid of hard work. Okay? We're going to recruit smarter, and we're going to run on the ideas. Now, great question, but I don't agree with all of it. Because in that question you said conservatives can't survive. If that's true, who am I? Who's Devin Nunes? Right? So, let me walk you through what we are going to do. David Valadao is running again, and he's running a district next to mine. This is a 72% Hispanic district, and Donald Trump is not going to win it. He's going to lose it probably by 15 points. I just took a poll. David Valadao is winning by 13 points. T.J. Cox only has a 35% reelect. So I'm going to go tell all people like you spent money to come here. You want to spend a little money on David? It'll go a long way and actually pick up a seat in a seat that's not one of the 31s, and we only need 19 to go, right? Then I'm going to take you down to Young Kim in Southern California. Yeah, we lost Orange County, but our candidate for governor who lost poorly, he carried all those seats. So what do you extract from that? Maybe we weren't talking about the right issues. Maybe we didn't have the right candidates. Maybe we didn't inspire the right people. Young Kim, born in South Korea. She won on election day last time, came through new member orientation and lost. I just did a poll there. She's leading by 3 points. Or Michelle Steele. She's tied. Then in California, we're worried about the election law change. That was the first time going forward. We really didn't understand it. We didn't think you really should be doing that. But since that time, we had a special election in Orange County in one of the supervisorial seats. And then this supervisorial seat, they're all big down there. Actually, Hillary Clinton carried it. So who'd they get? They got Loretta Sanchez to run. She's in Congress 20 years, representing this area. Very good Democrat candidate. We had 5 Republicans running. We realized we can't just sit back. So we got involved. The Central Committee endorsed one. We got engaged, and we started going door to door, and we started telling people, when you didn't vote, you know what happened? The Democrat won. And we woke them up. You know who won that seat? The Republican, even though it was one that went through. So we need to have a wake-up call. Either we're going to change the way we've done it before, or we'll continue to lose. In California, this idea of the top 2, that somehow it's going to bring us utopia, I don't think is helpful. The most popular governor in America today is a guy named Baker in Massachusetts, and he happens to be a Republican, and there's not one Republican in Congress from Massachusetts. He never would have had a chance to become the nominee and run in the general election if they had the top 2. And so what the top 2 does in California Good candidates think they can't get there. People won't be supportive because they think you can't win, so you don't get the higher quality. You know what the number one issue in California today? Homelessness. You know how homelessness was started in California? Democrats. Prop 47 and Prop 57. I just put together in my own community, and if you take all the major cities, it's grown tremendously. You know what city it has not grown in? San Diego. You know the party affiliation of the mayor of San Diego? He's a Republican. Because he did something about it. He took our principles, he went and put 3 tents together, because now we have court cases against whether you could pick somebody off the street to even give them help. You got to give them a 3-day notice before they take the tent off your own property. Then you got to haul off the carts and keep it. But he put 3 tents together. Here's veterans, here's people with children, here's singles. Brings them in, does a wraparound with health care, benefits and others, training, education, and gets them up and gets them out. We are having diseases that we have not heard of in decades come back to Los Angeles. That are being moved through fleas and rats, and now people in City Hall are getting them. What's their answer? I mean, it's appalling. We are better than this, but their policies are making it so unaffordable. Pick up the USA Today. What's the front page of USA Today? You can't afford San Francisco anymore. They're leaving. These are democratic policies that have turned a state that is so beautiful. And they raised the highest tax rate. There was a moment in time, and I won't get the number right because these were years ago, 25% of all the income within California came from 144,000 people out of that time 38 million. The governor should know all those people by name. Now if he wants to visit them, he's got to go to Texas or somewhere else. And they wonder why. And in this paper in USA Today, it shows where California people are going, Texas. New York people going, Boston, right? And they wonder why they're leaving. Structure dictates behavior. New York to Florida. Tax policy matters.
Let's discuss the issue of the president's policy in the Middle East as it relates to Syria. And this was a question that I said I wanted to ask you, but there are actually some questions in here from the audience, so I'm going to sort of put them together and frame it this way. The one particular area where Republicans on Capitol Hill over the past few years have been consistently willing to push back on the president is on matters of foreign policy. In 2017, a veto-proof bill passed out of a Republican House and a Republican Senate to make it more difficult for the president, for instance, to do a deal with Russia without congressional approval. And just this past few weeks, Republicans in the House joined on a resolution that was pushing back against what the president did in regard to Syria and Turkey. Some members of the audience wanted to know why maybe Republicans didn't take a wait-and-see approach and give the president more time to let his policy play out. But I wanted to ask you about how Republicans feel about the president's moves in the Middle East and your concern for what it will mean for a possible resurgence of ISIS and what it will mean for the influence of the United States vis-a-vis how Moscow and Ankara and Tehran and even Beijing look at the United States and its willingness to throw its weight around in a way to prevent them from throwing their weight around.
Great questions. Let me put it in perspective so we're all on the same page. Do not read that the resolution that we passed with 5 points that somehow went against the president. I was sitting in the Oval Office the day it passed, and I said, I just voted for this too. He said, I agree with all these 5 points. The president was very clear when he campaigned that he would like to try to end these wars around the world, and he doesn't believe America should be the police officers for everybody. But that doesn't mean he will not use foreign policy or strength of our military. What did he send? Was it 58 or 52 cruise missiles into Syria when they used gas? Barack Obama made a red line and finally talked to us about doing something about it after they passed it 12 times. The president was very decisive. And you know when he did it? He was sitting next to Xi Jinping. Passed him some dessert. Oh, by the way, I'm sending this through. So no country should question the fortitude of this president or the determination or when he will act. And the one thing they should really read into it, when he acts, he's going to act big enough that it's not going to last. And he's going to make sure our men and women are protected when they come, and it's going to be the best decided. And it was precision of where it went. The action that you brought up earlier about passing something and dealing with Russia, that's not about the president, that's about Article 1. One thing I have found within Congress for too long, you have given or succeeded power away. A check and balance system works. President Trump is not always going to be president. Don't know who that. We're always not going to be in the minority or in the majority. I want a system that works the way the founders has designed it to be, and Congresses in the past have given that power away. And if you're going to give the power away, you're going to create a great deal of damage because the power rests with all of us. Okay. So don't read that into one president over the other. That's an Article 1 issue that Republicans have been fighting for quite some time, and their ability to pass it. Now, when it comes to issues here, I just had lunch yesterday with the vice president and 3 other members. I think what the president was able to do right now is pretty impressive to get a ceasefire from Turkey. This is a delicate situation. Turkey is a NATO ally, but I have a problem with Erdogan. He's buying a Russian air defense system. He's talking to China. There's some real challenges there. The Kurds, they fought with us. They helped us take ISIS out, and we've watched the growth of it. Turkey believes some of the Kurds in there are terrorists. The president has kept troops there. I give you a diagram. I'm sorry, you don't know where Syria. These are where the oil fields are and the Kurds. So what did the president do? Here they come. Turkey starts moving in their tanks. The president gets I got to make sure what I'm telling you is out there public. This is in public.
No, don't mind me.
No. In public, the president the president listens to his generals and talks to them often, rightfully so, any president. At the end of the day, the president makes the decision. I've never seen a president that talks to more people, and then that's what I really appreciate about him. We had a small group of our military there, and they're rolling in. He does not want American men in harm's way, and he got a recommendation that they should be moved out, moved them out. Turkey's moving in. But what did he do? He sent a letter like that. He called Erdogan, do not do this and do not kill people, otherwise I'll take action against you. He then sends the vice president and Pompeo to Turkey. While they're flying there, we meet. You watch Nancy Pelosi. We should talk about that meeting because I don't think the public has really seen the truth behind that meeting. Nancy was always decided she was going to walk out of that meeting. Erdogan said he's not even going to meet or not going to do anything. The vice president gets a lot of credit, sat in there for I don't know how many hours. What the president did, he used the power of America. I got all these sanctions that I could put on you right here, and I'm going to show you what they are. Now, what do you want to do? And the president's he's got military, he's got sanctions, economic power, and he used that to actually get a ceasefire. At first, for just 5 days, what they thought they wouldn't. Enough time where the Kurds could move, where they wouldn't get slaughtered. Then, what happened just recently? You watched the president come out, was it yesterday, the day before? Not going to do the sanctions? Because there's going to be a permanent ceasefire. Now, we're going to have to monitor, check it. There's talk now that maybe Europe could come in and be part of the individuals there. We've got a number of prisoners of ISIS that we have collected. And there's roughly about 1,000 of those who are foreign fighters from these European nations who Europe won't bring them back. They're their citizens. So the president does have an argument of going through here. A concern that I would have, and probably the majority in the House, we watched what Obama, when he pulled a bunch of people out of Iraq, created ISIS, and he said it was a JV team and all the way through. We know the president learned from Obama's mistake that he's not going to do that. What we all want to know is what's taking place and what's happening, and we want to make sure our men and women are protected, but we want to make sure how do we utilize to protect the peace and make sure there's not terrorism there, and that's why the communication's going. And the president gets credit for creating a ceasefire, which is a very difficult situation, and he didn't get it just because he asked. He used the strength of America to persuade and make it a much better place.
Here's a softball. Do you know who the whistleblower is?
Okay, look at me in the eye. No, and I've never met with them. But I'll tell you this, I know more than the whistleblower because I have the transcripts of the phone call.
Do any of your colleagues who are on the Intel committee know who the whistleblower is?
I don't know. I don't know if they do or don't. They haven't come forward. I'm sure many of my members have theories of who the person is, and they're probably all guessing, but I don't know.
Okay. A question I get a lot, and it's in the queue here, is on term limits. You experienced term limits in California in the legislature. Obviously, in Congress, we do not have them. What are your thoughts on term limits, whether it would be a good idea for the country, and what it would mean in terms of the relationship between Congress and the executive?
That's a good question. I supported term limits when they went into effect in California, and I actually thought it, in the end, when I saw the experiment, it wasn't as good. On an average, people stay 10 years in Congress. I don't know what the term limit should be. Should it be 12? Should it be 6? In California, we started out with 6, and you put it in the Assembly, the House, and the Senate. And all it came to happen was you didn't change the staff. And all the bureaucrats didn't care what you said anymore because they were just going to wait you out. And they only happened because the House is twice the size of the Senate. You just started fighting with the other person in your party because you were just really running for this other place because of such time. They modified that 12 years in one house or the other. I believe the best form of term limits if we had more competitive of a seat, right? If I could have my voice and get somebody out or keep somebody if they're good, that's what I want to see. We had this before the Supreme Court. We did not win it on term limits. What I find, too, is there are some people who lost last time. Had they retired, we would not have lost that seat. And so I think the best nature of this, let the districts decide what it is. Let the districts have the say. If they think someone's pretty good and they want to keep it. But the number one thing I tell members, look, there's been fewer than 11,000 people that ever had the privilege to be a member of Congress. It is my highest privilege. But I will promise you this, I will not die in this job. And this will not be my last job. But if I go into that Capitol and I don't have goosebumps in my arm, nobody has to worry about voting me out. I just won't run again. And your first question, are you worried about all your retirements? So think about the questions that were asked. I need to fight to keep these people to stay in office, and you're telling me we should have term limits and we should kick them out sooner. Which one do we want, right? I want a system that brings the best and brightest and that we decide on people's ideas and that the power still rests with the people. To me, that's our best form of having it happen.
Okay, I think I am almost at the end of my line here, so I'm going to ask one final question, and that is, do you now expect President Trump to be impeached, and when would you expect that vote to occur?
Okay. Do I expect him to be impeached? Nadler, who's the head of the Judiciary Committee, campaigned to become chairman of that with his members by saying he would be the best chairman with impeachment. And this is before when the president just got elected. You have a new member of Congress from Michigan who said she was going to impeach and then cusses on her inaugural night. They voted for impeachment 3 times, twice before the Mueller report was even out there. They have more than half of their party already endorsed impeachment, and I always want the press to ask them, a good question for you to ask them, what are you going to impeach him on? What are the impeachable offenses? Have you read any transcripts? No? Well, so why are you going to impeach him? Just like in the polls, 73% already. I think the Speaker of the House and others, this is all they're focused on. Think about all the things we're not doing for America because all they want to do is impeach him. They took us through a 2-year nightmare. That didn't work. So we're going to change the system, bring it in, write the report, and then give it. I think they do impeach him. I don't think they get it done before Thanksgiving. I think they try to get it done before the end of the year. But ask this question. We're roughly almost 1 year away before an election. And they're trying to determine the outcome before it starts. We have United States-Mexico trade agreement. Do you know Mexico became our #1 trader a couple months ago and Canada became #2? And you're going to have the president go to negotiate with Xi Jinping of China next month? Wouldn't we be stronger if we just had an agreement with our first and second biggest traders while we're negotiating with our #3 trader, who really is what we need to do for the next century? But they care more about tearing this president down than building this country up. What are we going to do about prescription drugs? What are we going to do about surprise billing? What are we going to do about our veterans? All those things aren't happening. Or what about all the technological advances China's making? The Intel community, our committee, is the one that really deals with that, but they're not dealing with anything but impeachment. What did we do on the floor this week? We didn't do any big legislation because they can't take anything else up. Impeachment has overtaken their party and hence overtaken our country. So they're going to try to do what they want. I think at the end of the day, the American public and history will not be kind to them. Due process matters in this country. Even the worst individual in the world that goes before a trial, we believe in due process. Do you know how in America you're innocent until you're proven guilty? Max Rose, who I think in August was a quote that we shouldn't impeach, had now changed his opinion because he got a primary by a social democrat. He now says, the president says he's innocent, he has to prove it. You're no longer innocent. You're now guilty until you prove your innocence. Only with the president.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, thank you very much.
There you go. Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Minority Leader McCarthy. I think you've already gotten your money's worth, but there's more. There's more. Now, I mentioned a raffle before. Thank you for filling out the question cards. Keep that going so you can be part of these conversations. I mentioned a raffle, and so I might as well tell you what the prize is. Here's the thing. Great news. Each and every one of you are already entered in the raffle. It's an automatic thing. You don't need to fill it out. You are all qualified, or at least as qualified, to be an international oil and gas executive, as Hunter Biden was qualified to do that same job. And this is worth 50 grand a month, all right? So the winner of our raffle is going to actually get a job in a Ukrainian company for, I'm sorry? There is no raffle. There is no raffle. Forget all of that. One of the things I love about these summits is that we get to see a combination of really great minds get together and talk about really important things. Who here is concerned about either their kids or their grandkids coming back from college and wanting to be socialist? And even worse, changing our country to be socialist. I know I am. I've got 2 kids in college right now. One's at the Naval Academy. I think I'm safe there. The other one's at UCLA. I'm definitely not safe there. So when you're watching television and you see people having a panel discussion and you think, I wish I could have a cocktail with these people and watch them talk about these important things. That's what you're about to do right now. Except for the cocktails. Ma'am, sit down. There are no cocktails right now. Boy, she was like, boom. We're about to discuss the terrifying rise of socialism and discussions of moving this country toward a socialist model in this country with some of the greatest minds you'll see. Who doesn't want to have our fearless leader and commander-in-chief, Hugo Gurdon, moderating a conversation between Karl Rove, Byron York, and Kristen Anderson Soltis? I know I do. Excuse me, Kristen Soltis Anderson. I know I do. It's almost like, a rabbi, a priest, and a reverend go into a bar. That's what you're about to witness, and it's going to be fantastic. Guys, come on up here. We're going to have an important conversation now about the future of this country with some great minds. Thank you, guys.